On June 6, 1944, the Allies are trying to force an army across an ocean and onto 5 defended beaches. Thousands of men, thousands of vehicles, landing craft arriving in waves, engines screaming, salt water everywhere, sand swallowing wheels, steel colliding with steel. And in the middle of all of it, one vehicle has no gun, no turret, and almost no glory. It is not built to kill Germans. It is built to rescue the invasion from itself. Because the biggest threat in the first minutes of D-Day is not always enemy fire. Sometimes it is a truck stalled in the surf, a tank drowned before it reaches the beach, a landing craft stuck sideways at the tide line. One wreck in the wrong place and the next landing craft cannot unload. Then the one behind that cannot unload. Then the entire timetable begins to choke. That is how invasions die. Not with one dramatic explosion, but with traffic. And that is exactly why the British build one of the strangest Sherman variants of the entire war. A Sherman with its turret removed. A Sherman with a tall armored box welded on top. A Sherman designed to drive into deep water, shove landing craft off sandbanks, and drag broken vehicles out of the sea before the beach turns into a scrapyard. It is called the Beach Armoured Recovery Vehicle, BARV. So, how does one unarmed Sherman become one of the most important machines on D-Day? That is exactly what we are going to find out. The problem begins long before Normandy. In August 1942, the Allies raid Dieppe. The raid is a disaster. Men get pinned on the beach, vehicles bogged down. Armor cannot move where it needs to move. Engineers study the failure and come away with a brutal conclusion. If the Allies ever try to land in France again, ordinary vehicles will not be enough. The beach itself is a battlefield. The waterline is a battlefield. Even unloading is a battlefield. Specialized machines will be needed for every problem the sea can create. Minefields, sea walls, soft sand, obstacles, deep water, broken tanks, stranded landing craft. Every one of those problems needs its own answer. For the recovery problem, the answer becomes a Sherman. Not because the Sherman is the most glamorous tank of the war, but because it is reliable, available in large numbers, and adaptable. The British Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, REME, begin work in 1943. They take the American M4A2 Sherman, strip away the turret, add a tall armored superstructure, and waterproof the machine so it can plunge into surf that would kill an ordinary tank's engine. The result looks wrong. Top-heavy, boxy, almost unfinished, which is usually a sign that a military vehicle has become very, very specialized. That tall, armored structure is not there for style. It is there because the BARV has to work in water up to around 9 feet deep. The extra height keeps vital openings above the waterline. The commander can sit high up to see where the driver cannot. The wooden beams fixed to the front are there to push. Push vehicles, push landing craft, push anything that is about to become a beach-sized traffic jam. And there is one more strange detail. The BARV is not a gun tank. It is not even really a winch vehicle in the way people imagine. It is a towing machine. There was no time to perfect a fully sealed winch system that could survive regular immersion in seawater. So if something is stuck, somebody still has to go down into that cold water and physically attach the cable. Which is why the crew includes something almost no tank crew normally includes: a diver. Think about that for a second. D-Day, surf crashing, vehicles half submerged, bullets in the distance, oil on the water. And one member of the crew has to climb out, go into the sea, and hook steel cables onto dead weight while the invasion is happening around him. According to the REME Museum, some divers found the diving suit so awkward they abandoned it, stripped down, and held their breath instead. This is not glamorous work. This is dirty, freezing, terrifying engineering under pressure. But without it, everything behind them stops. And on D-Day, stopping is fatal. Beach Armoured Recovery Vehicles are among the first vehicles to land in Normandy. Not because they are supposed to lead an attack, but because they have to be in position before the beach clogs. Their job is simple in theory. Keep the exits open, keep the surf lanes open, keep the unloading moving. In practice, that means entering the water again and again to rescue drowned trucks, stalled tanks, and stranded craft before they become obstacles for the next wave. Picture the scene. A landing craft comes in too hard, grounds itself, and cannot back off. Another vehicle takes on water and dies. A truck loses traction. A tank sloughs sideways. The tide is rising. More craft are already incoming. Nobody has time for a committee meeting. Nobody has time for a recovery manual. The BARV moves. It drives into the surf where other armored vehicles should not go. The commander directs from above. The driver sees little and follows instructions. The diver goes overboard. Cable on, tension up, steel tracks bite. Engine roars. Something that weighed several tons a moment ago begins to move. Then, the BARV goes back for the next one, and the next one, and the next one. This is what makes the vehicle so interesting. It is not designed around firepower. It is designed around momentum. Every choice on it points to one thing: the invasion must not lose tempo. The turret is gone because the gun is irrelevant to its real mission. The high structure is there because deep water matters more than silhouette. The crew arrangement is unusual because vision and towing matter more than tank versus tank combat. Even the choice of the M4A2 mattered. REME favored that diesel-powered version because they believed it would better handle the shock of repeated plunges into cold water. This is what war engineering looks like when it is brutally honest. Not what is the best tank, but what is the exact machine needed for this exact nightmare. And Normandy was a nightmare of logistics. People love to remember D-Day as a story of courage and firepower, and it was both. But it was also a gigantic mechanical puzzle. Men cannot advance if vehicles cannot land. Vehicles cannot land if exits are blocked. Exits get blocked the moment damaged equipment piles up in surf and sand. So somewhere inside the success of D-Day is a less glamorous truth. The invasion needed mechanics in armor as badly as it needed fighters in armor. The BARV was that mechanic. Only about 60 Sherman BARVs were converted before D-Day. That is a tiny number compared to standard fighting vehicles. But that is the point. They were rare because they were specialized, and specialized machines become decisive precisely when conditions turn chaotic. Most tanks measure success in targets destroyed. The BARV measured success in disasters prevented. Beaches not blocked, craft not stranded, lanes kept open, minutes not lost. And that makes this vehicle perfect YouTube history material, because at first glance, it looks almost ridiculous. A Sherman with no turret, a giant box on top, no famous gun, no duel, no ace commander, no dramatic kill tally. Then you understand what it actually did, and suddenly it becomes one of the smartest armored vehicles of the entire Normandy operation. It also tells you something important about how wars are really won. Not every war-winning vehicle looks dangerous. Some look awkward. Some look improvised. Some are built to solve a problem so specific that most people never hear about them. But the battlefield remembers them anyway. Every truck that got ashore because the route stayed clear. Every tank that made it inland because something else was pulled out of the way. Every landing craft that got shoved back into usable water. That is the BARV's battlefield record, even if it never fired the shot people expect from a Sherman. And there is something almost poetic about that. The Sherman is one of the most recognizable tanks in history, but one of its strangest versions went to Normandy without the very thing people associate with tanks most, a gun. It went there to rescue, to clear, to push, to tow, to keep the invasion breathing. An unarmed Sherman built for chaos, not to break through a line, to stop the line from breaking itself. Here is the final score. On D-Day, the Allies did not just land soldiers, they landed a system. Infantry, engineers, naval firepower, landing craft, specialized armor, repair units, recovery teams. Remove one small part of that system and the whole machine becomes slower, weaker, more vulnerable. The Sherman BARV was one of those small parts. Easy to ignore, hard to replace, absolutely vital when the surf turned violent and the beach began to choke. That is what this vehicle really proved. The most important machine on a battlefield is not always the one with the biggest gun. Sometimes it is the one that keeps everybody else moving. And on the beaches of Normandy, that machine was a turretless Sherman driving straight into the sea. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you.